My Home, Jeet Droga Dundee, an Oneida Legend. This book is by the Oneida Indian Nations and Four Directions Productions. If you've got this book, go and get it so you can read it along with me.
Story time with Kaluhya.
My Home, Jeet Droga Dundee. It was a crisp, clear morning as Eli and his grandfather drove toward the river. Eli loved spending time with his grandfather and riding in grandfather's big red truck. Eli was most interested in seeing the fishing spot his grandfather loved as a child. As the sun rose, grandfather and Eli could hear the wind and the crickets and birds and the rustle of water. A sign near the dock said, "No dumping." Beyond the sign was an old abandoned factory. If only they would have read that sign, grandfather said sadly. Then he smiled and said, "Come, let's see what the river has for us." They had been fishing a while, and Eli was getting impatient. "Luxot," which is Oneida for grandfather. Eli said, "Are we ever going to catch anything?" "When I was a boy," said grandfather, "this river was full of fish. They'd practically jump right out of the water and into your lap." Grandfather glanced sadly toward the factory, but his face brightened as a fish darted across the water. "At least it seems the river is finally getting well again. It takes time, though, just like fishing." Dat yad dai sanundage. Patience, that's the key. "Luxot, I think I got one," said Eli excitedly, pulling on the taut fishing line. Grandfather chuckled. "I think you got a stump." Eli's line caught on a small log with an oddly sharp end. "It looks kind of like a giant pencil," he said. "It would seem that our friend Jonidu had been busy here," said grandfather. "Jonidu?" Eli replied. "Wow, a beaver did that?" "Yep, that's how they build their dams." "Jonidu can clear quite an area," added grandfather. "Once," grandfather said after a pause, "there was a turtle that lived in these waters. She lived at peace with all things. This river was her home." Turtle was kind and gentle. She always took great care to greet all she met with a warm smile and a friendly hello. One fine summer day, after a vigorous race with Peanut, the quick little trout, Turtle stood on the shore and looked out on her beautiful river. "Ah," she sighed happily. That is, until she saw some odd junk drift by. If there was one thing Turtle couldn't stand, it was a mess. She noticed that quite a bit of trash and debris had washed up on the riverbank. There were a lot of twigs and branches as well. "Oh," she thought, as she set to cleaning up the mess. As Turtle was cleaning, she heard a whimpering sound nearby. She looked down and noticed a small frog lying on the ground amid some junk. He was curled up in a ball and looked bruised and battered. "Poor little thing," said Turtle as she gently lifted the frog. "What happened?" asked Turtle as she carefully placed him on the ground. He stood up and began gesturing and chattering, but Turtle couldn't understand him. When he was finished, the tiny frog collapsed, exhausted. Turtle covered the frog with a blanket of leaves. "Don't worry, Froggy. You're safe here." Turtle finished picking up the trash, and with her nurturing, the little frog soon was up and hopping about. Summer faded to fall. One day, Turtle felt something cold touch her face. A snowflake. Turtle yawned deeply. It was time for a long winter nap. She dove into the river, burrowed down in the soft mud, and began to dream of spring. Winter came and the river froze, but Turtle paid it no mind, for she was deep asleep. Eventually, warm southern breezes began to hail the coming of spring. It was time for Turtle to wake up. Turtle sleepily rubbed her eyes and yawned. She felt stiff and groggy as the little frog pulled her arm excitedly. Turtle looked up to see a wall, a monumental wall. Logs and branches stretched from one bank to the other. Her river was gone. Just a trickle flowed now. Her home was now a mud pit. Carefully, Turtle and Frog climbed the wall of logs. When they reached the top, they couldn't believe their eyes. A small lake had formed beyond the wall, with a massive rambling structure brimming at its center with all sorts of mechanical contraptions. Worse still, nearly all the trees were gone. Pencil-pointed stumps now covered the landscape. Turtle scaled the wall and swam to the dock of the strange structure. She pulled herself up on the dock and was walking towards the lodge when snap! A board cracked and fell into the water. The door of the lodge flew open and out stepped a large, furry, and very angry-looking beaver.
Hey! What the heck you doing? You damaged my lodge. This is private property, cupcake.
Turtle was stunned. She muttered, "This is my home." Pointing at the wall of logs, she said, "My stream ran right through here."
That stream was nothing but noise, noise, noise. I took care of that. No need to thank me.
"Thank you," replied Turtle, growing very angry. "That stream was my home. You completely destroyed all of—"
Destroyed? Beaver suddenly interrupted. Nonsense! I have built.
He turned and walked upstairs that wound around the lodge and bellowed triumphantly,
I have brought order to this wild land. Civilization has finally arrived. Today's your lucky day. Hold on to your shell, toots. You're about to witness the birth of an exciting new way of life.
Beaver pulled a lever. Gears and machinery sprang to life. The lodge began to shake and rumble. Turtle felt the ground quake beneath her feet. Wheels spun. Gears turned, levers swung to and fro, valves sputtered, and crude transformers sent electric shocks through a series of wires, traveling upward and onward, crackling and sparking until it reached the top. Turtle looked anxiously. What will happen next, she thought. What happened next was nothing really. The light briefly flickered. Zzz, zzz. Beaver leapt down from the lodge and said, Pretty impressive, eh? Turtle was not impressed. Ah, well, Beaver said, not everyone appreciates ingenuity. Listen, Princess, I've got a lot to do. Turtle tried to speak, but Beaver cut her off. Have a nice day, he said, briskly slamming the door. Turtle banged on the door. What about my home? She screamed. The door swung open. Whoa! Calm down there, sweetheart. I've got you covered. Beaver looked about. See, I saved a spot. Right over there, just for you, finished Beaver, proudly pointing to a gooey, muddy area covered with junk and muck. You expect me to live in that? Shouted Turtle. Beaver simply rolled his eyes. You've got to take down this dam, shouted Turtle. Take it down, replied Beaver. This is my home. Your home? Fumed Turtle. Why, you buck-toothed little... Buck-tooth? Stammered Beaver. Why, you're just uncivilized. Turtle gritted her teeth and shook with anger. How dare he call her uncivilized? Uncivilized, she thought. That could work. Okay, Let's settle this in a civilized manner, she said. We'll have a contest. If I win, this pile of sticks is gone.
And if I win?
Asked Beaver. Then I'll leave, said Turtle, and you can keep your progress.
What sort of contest? Asked Beaver.
Turtle and Beaver stared at each other like gunfighters in the Old West. There was only one way to settle a dispute like this. Let's race, said Turtle. Turtle and Beaver stood on the dock with the frog between them. Beaver was wearing a wetsuit, along with a few other things he thought would give him the edge. Now remember, said Turtle. Turtle and Beaver stood on the dock with a frog between them. Beaver was wearing a wetsuit, along with a few other things he thought would give him the edge. Now remember, said Turtle, first one to the big tree wins.
Yeah, enough talk, barked Beaver. Let's do this thing.
Ready, set, go. The race was on. Beaver took the early lead, but Turtle was determined and soon closed in on Beaver. As she drew near, Beaver smacked her with his tail. Then he laughed and dove underwater. Turtle was furious. How could he cheat like that, she thought. She clenched her teeth and followed him under. Turtle raced after Beaver, more determined than ever. Just as she drew close, Beaver spun about and kicked her. Turtle couldn't believe what Beaver had done. He cheated again, she thought. She charged after him. There was no way she was going to lose this race. She raced harder than she had ever raced before. Soon she was gaining on him. What if he hits me again, she thought. She could see they were nearing the finish. She had to act quickly. She drew up behind him, stretched out her neck, and bit down hard on Beaver's tail. Yow! Howled Beaver. Beaver went head over heels, launching Turtle out of the water and through the air. Turtle landed with a hard thump on the shore and slid into a nearby stump. She was dizzy, and she stumbled to her feet, her head aching. She looked up and saw Beaver still in the water, looking stunned. Behind her, she could see the tree, the finish. All she had to do was touch it. She glanced back at Beaver, who was now charging up the shore toward the tree. Turtle turned and ran for the tree, but Beaver was faster and pushed past her, shoving her to the ground. Beaver laughed as he ran to the tree. He stretched out his hand and was thrown backwards on his butt. His wetsuit had caught on a stump. Beaver rubbed his eyes and looked up to see Turtle standing beside the tree. He had lost. Turtle reached out but didn't touch the tree. She stood there frowning. No, I won't win this way. Not this way. Beaver scrambled to his feet and raced to the tree. He stretched out his hand and Turtle quickly touched the tree at the same time as Beaver. Turtle looked at Beaver with a coy smile and said, "Well, what do you know? It's a tie." Beaver was stunned. He started to protest, but Turtle cut him off. "Look," he said, "I could have easily won this race, but I chose not to." "Won? But you cheated," shouted Beaver. Yes, I did. "And that was wrong," Turtle said. "But you know, both of us cheated." Beaver thought for a moment. So he grumbled, "I guess that means we both lose." Turtle rolled her eyes and said with a smile, "Well, I guess you could look at it that way, or both of us win." "Look," said Turtle, "there's no reason we both can't live here. There's more than enough room for all of us. But we'll both have to make some changes." Beaver was amazed. He knew he wouldn't have been as gracious if he had won. He realized how selfish and reckless he had been. Beaver released enough water so the river flowed again, and Turtle's home was restored. From that moment on, Turtle, Beaver, and the frog lived in harmony together. So you see, Guade, which means grandchild, grandfather said, we must always stand up and take care of Mother Earth. Tkaeliki, replied Eli, which means it is correct. There was a sudden tug on Eli's line. Luck's out. I think I've got something. Eli reeled his line excitedly. He caught a small trout. Well, it seems we're finally making some progress, Grandfather said. It's getting late. Time to go home. That story had indigenous language. You know, our ancestors used to speak many languages. You could learn a new one too. Yawanko, thank you for listening. Onogiwa. If you enjoyed this video, push the like button and don't forget to subscribe.